They called it Olua Valley, a place hidden between red hills and thick forest, where traditions were stronger than law and silence was often louder than truth. From the outside, the village looked peaceful. Clay houses lined the dusty paths. Smoke curled gently from cooking fires. Children played by the river. Elders gathered at dusk to speak of old victories and older mistakes. But beneath that calm surface lived fear. Fear of disgrace. Fear of the ancestors. Fear of being different. In Olua Valley, a person's worth was decided early. Once the village chose who you were, escaping that name was almost impossible. That was how Abeni grew up. Abeni was not loud. She was not bold. She did not fight for attention. She listened more than she spoke, worked more than she rested, and carried herself with a quiet dignity that made some people uncomfortable. Her mother had died when she was young. Her father followed a year later after a sudden illness no one could explain. By the time Abeni understood what loss meant, she was already alone. She was taken in by her uncle, Baba Kunle, a respected man in the village council, and his wife, Iya Kunle, a woman known for her sharp tongue and colder heart. They fed Abeni, they clothed her, but they never loved her. From the very first day, Abeni learned her place. She woke before sunrise, fetched water, cleaned the compound, cooked meals she was never thanked for. She slept on a thin mat near the door, always ready to rise when called. Yet, despite everything, Abeni grew into something rare. She was intelligent. She noticed patterns others ignored. She remembered stories the elders forgot. She asked questions, not loudly, but persistently, and people noticed. The village teacher once said, "This girl sees beyond what is shown." That single sentence planted a seed of resentment inside Iyakunle's heart. Because her own daughter, Morayo, had always been praised before until Abeni arrived. Morayo was beautiful and proud, used to admiration, but she lacked patience. She disliked learning, and she hated competition. Slowly, attention shifted. Elders began asking Abeni for help remembering old laws. Children gathered around her when she told stories at night. Even travelers stopped to greet her respectfully. Every smile Abeni received felt like an insult to someone else. Then came the announcement. One evening, the village gong echoed through Olua Valley. Everyone gathered at the square. The high elder stepped forward, leaning on his staff. "It is time," he said, "to choose a representative." A murmur spread through the crowd. "The kingdom beyond the hills has asked for one among us, someone wise, truthful, and untainted, to live at the royal court and learn the ways of leadership." This was no small thing. Anyone chosen would gain honor, their family would rise, their future would change forever. Names were whispered. Morayo's chin lifted. Abeni stood quietly, her eyes lowered. Then the elder spoke again. "After much observation, we have chosen Abeni." The silence was heavy. Then chaos erupted. Iyakunle's face twisted in disbelief. Morayo's hands trembled. Voices overlapped. "Her? The orphan? She has no lineage." Abeni felt the ground shift beneath her feet. She had never wanted power. She had never dreamed of leaving the village. But destiny had spoken, and destiny is dangerous. That night, Iyakunle could not sleep. She sat in the dark, listening to Morayo cry softly beside her. "They stole my future," Morayo whispered. "They chose her over me." Iyakunle clenched her jaw. "No," she said slowly, "she will not leave this village." And that was when the plan was born. 3 days before Abeni was meant to depart, something happened. At dawn, screams shattered the calm. Villagers ran toward the shrine. A sacred object, the oath stone, symbol of truth and protection, was missing. Panic spread. The elders gathered. "This is a crime against the ancestors," someone said. Whispers began, and then a voice cut through the noise. "I saw her near the shrine last night." All eyes turned. Abeni froze. "I saw Abeni," the voice repeated, "alone." Abeni stepped forward, confused. "That is not true," she said softly. "I was in the compound all night." More voices rose. "She has motive. She wants to leave the village. Maybe she tried to weaken our protection." Abeni's heart pounded. "This is a lie," she said. "I would never—" "Silence," an elder shouted. The high elder looked at her gravely. "Abeni," he said, "until the stone is found, you will be held." Held meant one thing. A small mud structure near the forest edge. No windows, only a door. Fear rippled through Abeni's body. "I am innocent," she whispered, but innocence rarely speaks louder than fear. They locked her inside. The darkness was thick. The air smelled of earth and damp wood. Hours passed, then hunger, then thirst, then doubt. Abeni sat on the cold floor, hugging her knees. Why would they believe this? Who wants to destroy me so badly? Outside, the village moved on. By nightfall, the story had changed. She tried to steal power. She disrespected the ancestors. She was never pure. Each version worse than the last. Morayo walked freely among them, her face painted with false sorrow. "It hurts me to say this, but I always felt something was wrong." Iyakunle nodded silently beside her. Inside the room, Abeni whispered prayers into the dark, not for rescue, but for strength. What no one knew was that the forest listened. A hunter named Sadiq, passing near the shrine that night, had seen something, a shadow, 2 figures, one familiar. But fear had kept him silent. Now, as the village buzzed with hatred, his conscience burned. By the second night, guilt won. He went to the elder. "I did not see Abeni," he said quietly. "I saw Morayo." The elder's grip tightened on his staff. "Be careful what you say," he warned. "I am careful, and I am certain." The search began again, this time quietly. By morning, the oath stone was found, hidden, wrapped, inside a storage pot behind Iyakunle's compound. The truth crashed into the village like thunder. They opened the isolation room. Light poured in. Abeni blinked, weak but standing. When she saw the elders, she did not beg. She simply said, "You found it." The village gathered. Morayo collapsed to her knees when confronted. Iyakunle screamed denial until her voice broke. The punishment was swift. They were stripped of honor, banished from council privileges, condemned to serve the village they tried to deceive. Abeni was cleared, but something had changed. She was no longer just the quiet orphan. She was the girl who survived being erased. When Abeni finally left Olua Valley, she did not look back in anger. She carried no bitterness, only clarity. At the royal court, she learned leadership not through comfort, but through memory. Memory of injustice, memory of silence, memory of surviving when the world decided you were guilty. Years later, when she returned, not as a visitor, but as a leader, the village bowed. Not because she demanded it, but because truth had crowned her long ago.